Hello survivors and welcome to another Walking Dead Road to Survival video, and in this video we're going to be taking a first look at Mythic Raso, who is going to be the next promo character coming to RTS. He is a character that you may recognize from some of the roadmap stories. I believe he may have even been in the new world map stories as well. He is effectively, I think, a bad guy. He's a baddie. Are we the baddies? He's the baddie. On the right hand side we can see he's kind of geared up like a cowboy. He has got the big pistol, cowboy hat, but he's got the big rifle. He is a tough character, obviously. He has not got an attached weapon in this situation, so that can be a bonus for you if you are going to be able to get your hands on this character. But no visuals, no nice visuals on a weapon in his hands. On the left hand side we can see him in his grizzled veteran self, as it is his title, without the hat, but he has got the hat as the character, which is, I think a lot of people prefer characters to have their hats if they have hats. But yeah, on the left hand side we can see him not really much going on with his art. I think it's actually pretty some of the most chilled out art we've seen within the Mythic characters, but he looks kind of cool. He is from the like I said, from the storyline, so it is nice to see those characters come through. As a tier 5 gold mythic at level 600, he has got 12,583 attack, 14,613 defense, 13,395 HP. He is a tough character, and he is a control character. We don't see too many control characters. Mythic character, of course, and he is a member of the Saviors as his allegiance. Now we'll go across to check out his adrenaline rush, and it is called Stunning Blaze. It has got a recharge rate of 55 AP. Deal 20% of this character's defense in bleed damage to one enemy for 2 turns. Up to 2 enemies get stunned for 2 turns. So a few things to go over. He is 55 AP here, so he would not need any AP on attack if he was on a defense team or on an attack team. He'd be able to get his rush naturally, turn 3, just every single time without any AP on attack, so you would want to go for a heavy stat weapon on this character. Now his bleed damage is based on his defense, which I think is one of the first times we've seen this. The majority of the time we've seen it on attack, and I kind of like this for a defense team character. It makes sense. I would say 20% isn't crazy high, but you know, he can get his defense really high without too much of a problem. Now that bleed will obviously last for 2 turns, so it'll be pretty hefty, and if it goes on to someone like a princess or a Sandy, they're generally not going to be able to survive it, just based on the amount of bleed that he's going to be able to get out and the HP that they're not going to have boosted. They're most likely going to get taken out. So heals, cleanses, and the likes are going to be very important, maybe even revives. This is where leaders like Alice could become quite important. Up to 2 enemies getting stunned for 2 turns is obviously very powerful, especially as this rush has got a quick turnaround. It is going to be 2 turn stun, and then the next turn he'll do it again. 2 turn stun, and they'll be stunned for 2 turns. They'll get 1 turn, 2 turn stun. It could potentially go to the same character every time. It's going to be pretty random, but we'll test it out to see how it works. Okay, so here we are on turn 2. On an attack team, you will need to give him some AP on attack if you do want to use Glenn, you know, to work with him, but otherwise he could be 100% fine with a stat weapon. I've got him with a defense weapon in his hands just to boost this bleed a little bit. We're going to target the higher HP character, and we're going to do the rush, and it's going to do no damage, so no chance of anything, you know, dangerous happening. But as you can see, it deals some bleed, up to 20% of the character's current defense. If this character has buffs, it will obviously increase the amount of bleed that he's going to do. You do see the 2 stunned targets as well. It seems to be the person you actually rush, and then 1 random other target, as Erica has been stunned as well. Now you might be thinking, well, that was only 5,000 bleed. That's not too much of a problem. He did only have 20,000 defense. Unbuffed, there was not a defensive leader there. And if you've got a defensive character, I've got my Ezekiel up to 40,000 defense. Not even any problem at all. Including the lieutenant system, you're going to be able to get that up to huge amounts. So 20% of 40,000 is instantly going to become 8,000 bleed. Now imagine Ezekiel's 300% defense buff went off at the same time, and then Raso got the rush off as well. Well, that's going to be some crazy level bleed, and I might try and test that out for you at the end of the video. But we'll look at the upgrade slots on this rush, and you can see at tier 2 it goes from 1 turn to 2 turns on the duration of the bleed, and at tier 4 it is an extra stun target, so it would initially only be one stun target. So you'd only need 1 gold mythic to get everything working on the rush here, which is actually quite nice. You do not have to upgrade this at all. We have seen this quite regularly on a lot of characters where the rush is just ready to go as long as you get them to tier 4, and I actually kind of like that. I do think this rush is very powerful though. Even if you don't see the bleed as that much of an issue, the control is, and there haven't been that many good controllers so far, so maybe Raso's here to fill that gap. We'll go across to check out his signature move, and it is called Paralyzing Shot. It has got an initial cooldown of turn 2, cooldown of 1 turn, number of uses unlimited, deal a basic attack for 200% damage to one enemy. That enemy gets stunned for 2 turns. So obviously, the initial cooldown being 2 turns, turn 2 is absolutely fine. The cooldown of 1 turn is extremely quick. That means obviously he's going to be doing it every other turn, which is going to be really very hard to deal with. Number of uses being unlimited is nothing new. Deal 200% damage to one enemy is a lot. 200% is much more damage than we're kind of used to, but it is going to be based off of his attack stat. And by the looks of his main kit, at least with his rush, you're going to be not really raising his attack as much as his defensive stats, especially if you want to use him on a defense team anyway. So it might have been that they gave it 200% here just because his attack's going to be extremely low. That enemy getting stunned for 2 turns is just going to amplify what this guy does. Stun on the rush, now stun on the signature move. This guy seems to be the stun guy. We'll have to see what else he brings to the table when it comes to his passives, but even if it is just that one enemy getting stunned for 2 turns, it is going to be frustrating off turn 2 because that's going to be the turn before an attack team's natural rushes. Okay, so we're just going to come up against Raso on the defense team. As you can see him down the bottom on the defense. We are going to do the last attack. I have hit defend the majority of the time so far, and you should see Raso do his signature move, and he does it against Elodie because there's trait damage there. Elodie takes 200% damage. Obviously, like I said, it's not going to be huge amounts just based on the fact that the attack stat of Raso is not going to be extremely high, but she gets that stun for 2 turns. Now you can of course resist this, and I do think stun resist is going to be quite heavily used right now before Raso comes out. Whether Raso will improve the usage of stun resist, we'll have to wait and see. But this would be the natural turn that I'd normally rush. You know, I normally have all of my characters' rushes ready for turn 3 at worst, as long as I had the right setup. I could potentially rush faster, but Elodie here would not be able to rush in this situation, and he'd most likely focus other alert characters, the likes of Sandy, for instance, on attack teams. So this signature move just adding to the control that he already is going to be bringing to the table with that rush, Paralyzing Shot. That initial cooldown of turn 2 and cooldown of 1 turn does mean that he'd do a basic attack on turn 1, his signature move turn 2, his rush turn 3, then his signature move again turn 4, then a basic attack. And if he was controlled in any way, he would just do his signature move. That's actually the kind of good thing. If he was controlled when it comes to his rush at all, he would just be doing his signature move every other turn. So he'd still be getting the stuns in, but he just wouldn't be getting the bleeds. So you could kind of see it like that. When we look at the upgrades of the signature move, tier 3, it gets -1 cooldown. So it goes from a cooldown of 2 turns to a cooldown of 1 turn, which is obviously quite important. And that being on tier 3 is nice. Tier 5 isn't actually that big a deal. It just improves the amount of damage it's going to do. If it was switched around with the cooldown and the damage, that obviously would have been much more problematic when it comes to the difference between a tier 4 and a tier 5, or that second gold mythic Raso when it comes to the pulls, other than the stats, of course. So generally speaking, on the signature move, you're going to get the best out of him just by getting 1. And if you get the second, there's no required upgrades on the military supplies to get this maxed out again, which is nice. Now Raso of course does have some mythic abilities. These are his passive skills. The first one is precision, but this is because he is a control character. Enemy resistances are 20% lower against his character, so if you do stack stun resist against his signature move and rush, he's going to have a better chance of doing a stun against you than another character would who doesn't have precision, which is obviously good. Defense booster, when this character starts their turn, this character gets 15% defense for 1 turn. You might have seen this already. This is going to boost his rush in terms of how much damage that bleed's going to do, and it's also going to make it so he doesn't take as much damage. Now, 15% isn't much, But I think it's more just if you don't have anyone else boosting defense on a defense team, at least Raso's going to boost it for himself. His third passive is called Wave Breaker. At the beginning of each wave, this character gets 30% defense down resistance for their first 3 turns. So this is kind of like the leader skill from Ezekiel, but it requires you not having Ezekiel. If you don't have Ezekiel as your lead, you can have someone else. It means he's not going to be massively debuffed when it comes to the amount of bleed damage he's going to do. And I think a lot of people probably will stack defense on this character just because you can get the best out of him that way. I would still raise his HP, but putting a lot of defense on this guy doesn't seem to be the wrong way to go. Now, he has got a last passive, and this is definitely the most powerful one. It is Stun Gun, and it pretty much does what it says on the tin. When attacked, 30% chance the attacker gets stunned for that turn and their next turn. So it isn't as powerful, I don't believe, as an actual stun gun, because it would be 1 full turn after the current turn, whereas a normal stun gun is 2 full turns after the current turn, because it stuns you for 3 turns when you're attacking a defense team character. But it does also mean that you can't disarm this. This is going to be the big thing. You can't disarm this like you could disarm a weapon. It does mean you don't have to go for a controlling 3rd slot on any weapon you put in his hands as well, because if he had impair on defense, you could impair and stun someone at the same time. Or you could potentially have it where the impair doesn't happen and the stun does, or the stun doesn't happen and the impair does. So you could see it as like 2 chances of controlling someone that attacks him. Disarms would be able to hit the impair and obviously remove it, but they wouldn't be able to remove the stun gun. And that is going to be where the biggest problems are going to be faced, I think, on this character. Okay, so we're just going to attack with the same team just to show you how his passives work. You can see he's got that 30% defense down resist, and you can see Ezekiel is not the leader. So that's obviously good. He has not got the 15% defense buff because he only gets it when it's his turn, and we will show you that actually happening. I'm going to focus him, and you might see some of my characters get stunned. Now, I actually stunned him in this situation, but I do believe even when my character stuns him, it's not going to block his passive. As you can see, Glenn still got stunned, whereas normally on a normal stun gun, on an actual weapon, if you stun the character, you can't get stunned on the follow-ups. But he's going to be able to still stun you 30% of the time. Now, I got lucky, but yeah. Now you can see he does get the 15% defense buff, so you could potentially see that first turn as a good time to sort of try and take him out quickly with big signature moves. We have got a few fast characters that have got big signature moves like Alpha, Tyrese, Shiva. But after that, he's going to start getting buffed, and obviously other things are going to come into play. Other people's signature moves, other people's rushes. And I think the fact that the stun gun can work even when he's stunned, which was nice to actually see in action, is extremely powerful, obviously. The fact that it can't be disarmed, extremely powerful as well. Definitely a dangerous character. Maybe he's going to have to be hit with character rushes and signature moves that don't actually do any initial damage. Characters that can just hit a big bleed without actually hitting someone. I don't think anyone actually like that exists at the moment, but that's kind of what's needed. Now, when we look at these skill upgrades for the passive, you can see at tier 1, he gets the defense booster. At tier 2, he gets precision. At tier 3, he gets wave breaker. And then at tier 4, he gets the first half of stun gun. He gets 15% of the full 30%. And at tier 5, when he get that second gold mythic character, you can upgrade the second part of stun gun and get that second 15% chance. Those obviously stack together to make 30% total, and that's how you get the upgrade slots. I would definitely say pretty much all of his passives are worthwhile, but that stun gun definitely stands out as the most important one if you did want to prioritize. Now, he is a specialist, and you probably already saw this. He is an Outlast character. When this specialist is defeated, their death is delayed for 1 turn, during which they may still take an action, and they receive 100% EP. We know how Outlast works. There is already quite a powerful Outlast character in the game in Governor, and I'm sure he's been quite frustrating. I don't think Raso's going to have as big an initial impact when it comes to Outlast and how his kit works. You know, the way it works with Governor, him being completely 0 HP enhances his rush, means he's generally going to take down 2 characters a lot of the time. Whereas Raso will still get some control of, but if he's the last person you take out, it's going to be pretty ineffective. But there are other characters in the game which are really good with Outlast characters. For instance, Dr. Stevens and an Outlast is really good because if you take everybody out really quickly on the same turn, Raso effectively is delayed by one turn. Doc Stevens will do his halo because of this, and that can be very frustrating. Okay, so we are hard focusing Raso here with some fast characters, and I am going to take him out and he'll go into an Outlast state straight away. And as you can see, if I do hard focus him and getting out of the game early on, like I was saying, could potentially be a way to go. If I just defend on Doc Stevens, he will get his rush off. The bleed will come out, and the two characters being stunned, he will be taken out, but he will obviously have the opportunity to be revived back up. This is how Outlast works. You guys know it. And now I have two characters controlled on my attack team. In this case, it's Dr. Stevens and Alice, but it could effectively be like your two main damage dealers. For instance, you could have Sandy here. Sandy could be controlled. You could have Tyrese, whose rush is ready. And then he's going to get picked up potentially in those two turns because they've got a Dr. Stevens or other revived characters on the defense team. So focusing him without controlling him is going to be a problem. And obviously that's because when you control a character before they go into an Outlast state, they will be controlled in Outlast. So if you manage to stun him before he goes into Outlast, he will still be stunned, but he can obviously be cleansed by other teammates on that turn. He doesn't have anything in his kit to stop that from happening, but if you were to impair him, let's say, he'd still be able to get potentially off his signature move, which it could still control a character for 2 turns. Now, he did not have an attached weapon, of course, but like I said before, you do not need to have AP on attack on this character on defense or attack. You can just double down on stats, defense and HP, get him nice and tanky. The third slot, again, is pretty much up to you. You can go for control, like impair on defense, or you can just ignore any control and go for some other third slot. I've not really thought about it too hard in terms of what third slot he could have. That could be good. There might be some healing ones where he gets attacked and can potentially heal teammates. That could be maybe decent. Okay, so I did say I would test out what it would be like if Ezekiel did his 300% defense buff and then Raso did his bleed. So we'll just do the defense buff, and I think it should go to Raso as well. Yep, and then we're going to do Raso's bleeds. It will stun the Garrett up the top, and it'll go to 20,000 bleed, which is actually just pretty crazy, just based off of no other upgrades. He hasn't got any mods on him. He hasn't really got that great a weapon. I think it's a 35% defense weapon. So, and then obviously no lieutenant system, guys. It's just a base level 600. The combination between those two characters could just be that RNG moment where it's just like, damn, I've just taken 20,000 bleed. That's going to take out any damage dealing character on an attack team. Like, you're mainly going to see this guy as a defense team character. Against a defense team, 20,000 bleed, maybe you would see as not being that big a deal. But against a Sandy, Andrea, like Tyrese, these characters don't have that much HP. They're going to get one shot by that bleed. And like I said, it is without the lieutenant system, and that 300% buff on base is pretty much going to turn into the kind of defense that he's going to have with lieutenant system and fully buffed out with combat mods and, you know, all the buffs on top. So I think the bleed's going to generally be 15 to 20k, and it's going to be quite devastating, to, like I said, to some of these damage dealers. Raso does look like a pretty dangerous defense team character. He has things that are going to be very hard to deal with. The only fortunate side you can say when it comes to his kit is the fact that he is very one-dimensional. He brings stun to the table, but not much else when it comes to control. So if you do want to, you know, resist stuff when it comes to Raso, stun, resist does seem to be the way to go, especially for the first couple of turns when he's getting that signature move off the rush off. And if you do want to focus him, I would probably just try and build up someone who has a really hard-hitting rush and take him out that way. But you do have to control him somehow. Like, I'm going to be getting stunned on my disarm character and just being question marks for the first couple of times. And even though I know it's how it's meant to work, it's just going to be like, damn, I've actually just got stunned on my disarm for the first time ever from attacking somebody. But yeah, that is pretty much going to be the way it's going to be. You've got to figure out ways to deal with this guy, but if you get him, he's instantly going to make your defense team more powerful, and he's going to work great on pretty much any defense team, because I think he's more of a lone wolf kind of character. He brings to the table the stuff that would make a lot of sense to him with like Ezekiel lead, but he does it himself, so he doesn't need it. So even if you don't have Zeke and you didn't have any other promos, this guy's going to instantly make your defense team better. It's just as simple as that. But do tell me what you think about Mythic Raso. Do leave your thoughts in the comments down below. What do you think of his visuals on the right-hand side, his art? What do you think about his kit? I mean, his kit's going to be the big focus by a lot of people, I think, because it is, like I said, very, very powerful. But that is going to be the end of my video, guys. If you did enjoy it or find it informative, please hit that like button. And any shares of my videos, I'm very thankful for, guys. I do see my analytics quite often where I see shares of my videos, and it does make a big difference. So thank you very much for sharing my videos over the last few months. But that is going to be the end of this video, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in. And as always, keep on surviving, guys. Keep on surviving.